Hello, my name is Curtis Hamilton, and this is a review of my ePortfolio and some of the highlights. First off, we look at the goals. A couple of my goals, just to go over them very quickly, is to someday become a building level administrator. One of my longer term goals includes possibly finishing the district level certification and becoming a district administrator. Um, I'm going to go ahead and point to my leadership philosophy. And my leadership philosophy, one of my big ideas is the ability to bring up others around me in order to meet goals and to lead those around me through cooperation and collaboration. Um, so let's go ahead and take a look at some of the activities in my ePortfolio. I'm going to look at the elementary level. And in the elementary level, some of the activities I did, the first one was I got a chance to look at the improvement process at Tecumseh South Elementary, and I got to talk to their principal, Scott Dial, and we talked a little bit about kind of how he has tried to improve the school. But then I also got the opportunity to go to a board meeting in which they discussed the need for improvement to the student handbook, and so then this activity kind of took that view of how the district was wanting the handbook to change and how the principal Scott Dial was going through that change and the things that he was doing in order to meet that. Another one I did in elementary was I was able to demonstrate professional norms. I was actually got the ability to meet with the elementary principals. We have 4 of them in our district, and I got to go to their principal meetings over a 3-week period here recently. You see a picture of the Zoom meeting in which I attended, and I got to attend 3 of those, as well as some personal meetings actually with 2 of the other administrators, because I just wanted to follow up on some other things that I'm doing in the portfolio. The next one I did was I evaluated the school culture at Tecumseh South. This included one of those other interviews I was talking about. I got a chance to interview, again, Scott Dial over the culture in which he has tried to purvey at Tecumseh South Elementary. In evaluating the culture, I looked at things that they purposely do in order to create the culture that they expect there at Tecumseh South. That includes things like parent involvement, in which they have certain expectations that they put out there to encourage parent involvement, but also to make sure the functionality is there. And then you also see the emblem of Tecumseh South that, as I talked to Scott, brings a lot of pride to an elementary school when they can have that sense of unity. My next one was I did a virtual reality professional development for all of our elementaries here in the district. That included me preparing curriculum for virtual reality and what it would look like in their elementary classrooms. And then I went and actually worked with the teachers on 4 different professional development days in order to see how they could work it into their classroom. And it's actually kind of taken off, and it's been a very good experience for me. But the ability to lead, the ability to have this tech-rich curriculum tool was very important to my progress as an administrator. The next activity I did in elementary was a leadership activity. Is basically trying to find different resources in the community and how as an administrator I can access those resources. So through this, I was able to evaluate the different resources, but also I was able to plan how to reach out to them. And you see my communication web that I made in my studies at Fort Hays, but you also see that I did a principal interview with Scott about how he reaches out to the community, and his interview actually kind of backed up the idea of having that communication web, the idea that the connections are the big deal, whether it's staff, students, or himself. Having a connection with those in the community is how they get a lot of their support. The next one I did was a seminar on dyslexia, which I attended with the other elementary school principals. It was done in order to update their practices to the new law that was passed in Kansas last year. And so for this standard, which was, again, how am I going to be able to keep up with the legal issues in education? This is a big one on, especially in the elementary, being able to make sure you meet those standards. And then middle school and high school will also have to do it, but this one specifically was a focused seminar on meeting the new dyslexia standards in Kansas. The next activity I did was I gathered and analyzed the district policy on evaluations. Being a high school teacher, I wanted to reach out and see what evaluations would look like in an elementary setting, since I don't get to see that on a regular basis. So in order to do this, I evaluated our district system, and then I evaluated how it is implemented at the elementary through interviews with the principal from Tecumseh South, as well as discussions with the other principals in the district. And so those are my elementary activities. To take a look at my secondary is my next objective. And the highlights of my secondary include rewriting the school mission statement. I was part of a site team which rewrote the school mission statement, and you see some of my documents here. You can see the notes. You can see an actual Google form that we sent out, and also the new mission statement that we were able to do over a period of time. The next activity I did at the secondary level was a review of the disciplinary handbook, which was also a big deal with some of the issues we had this last school year. So I took it upon myself to review the disciplinary handbook, and then I also, during one of my observation days, I actually got to go through the disciplinary process with several students. Then the next activity in the secondary was my ability to show ethical practices. I was able to do this through professional meetings with the other leaders in the building over a 2-year period, really, and be able to show those skills that are necessary to be an administrator. My next activity was attending an IEP meeting, in which also dealt with pre-research on how the IEP process works. What are the parent rights? What are some of the things that I need to be aware of as an administrator when going into an IEP, and the things that we must provide for those students? And so that is what this slide focuses on. The next activity was a breakdown of test scores in order to plan educationally. And I used my principal and myself broke down the AP test scores as a whole, and then also my specific department in social studies where I work, in order to implement some ideas to the teachers there. And my next activity is was a rewards program that the school put in this last school year, which I actually got to participate in because it just happened to be that's what they wanted me to do on one of my observation days. I was able to gather information, contact parents of students who were being rewarded for showing above and beyond behaviors. And so that was a great experience for me in communication with parents on a positive way. The next activity I did, I actually wrote a grant to get the virtual reality equipment for the high school, and that process actually was a lot longer than I expected, but you see there I went through the grant application, I went through the purchasing, and I also was able to help implement that into the high school itself. The next activity I did was create a master schedule, which I had done as a department chair, but I've never looked at the schedule as a whole. So I got with the principal, who I usually just talk to about social studies, but I got to view the whole enrollment and how that will fit in, similar to what I already do in my specific department, like spreadsheet, how that would transfer over to how an administrator plans for a master schedule. And so I got to work with that, which was a great experience. The next activity was my involvement in interviews. I actually was involved in 2 interviews. Both of them, I was able to ask questions. I was able to work with the rest of the interview team in order to review the interview, actually get ready for the interview, do the interview, and then review the interview. And then my last my last secondary one was actual professional development, the creation of and the actual implementation of. I actually created 8 videos similar to the one you see here on the slide. I presented a slideshow, which actually I presented a lesson, but the slideshow is the guide for the lesson to our staff. And finally, my reflection over the program, I was able to really reflect on how I started the program, thinking this was just going to be a way that I would kind of advance myself as an educator, and I'm finishing it knowing that being an administrator is something I really want to do. So that is my overall reflection of the program. There are several parts that were very meaningful to me, including the tech one, which had a big impact on me doing some virtual reality stuff that's moved me along and helped me be a district leader even farther. And then also some of the law and special education stuff that's helped me realize my part in that as well. So this has been my review of the ePortfolio. Thank you for listening.